Dear Charles Darwin, this should come as no surprise to you, given the prevailing worldviews of your time, but I was never allowed to learn about evolution as a child. I was brought up in a fundamentalist, Christian family, and so I was taught that evolution was a lie from Satan to trick mankind into disbelieving the Bible. You have been demonized by religious zealots all over the world, mostly in the United States. I shed my faith as an adult due to a number of factors not related to your influence. Since then, I have been free to learn about your theory of evolution by natural selection and the subsequent research that has shaped many scientific disciplines since you published on the origin of species. I recently opened up some science books and educated myself, and what a beautiful world have I discovered. Science has filled a lot of the gaps, and you would be amazed at what I have learned. While we still don't know the origins of life, we do know that given the right time and conditions, self-replicating molecules, called DNA, form. I learned that DNA drives an embryological process, where cells divide and unfold into physical features of a life form. And that sometimes there are errors in the replication process, changes in the DNA that cause physical mutations. I learned that most mutations are devastating, causing the recipients to die before producing offspring, but that on very rare occasions, a beneficial mutation provides a survival advantage and ultimately gets passed on to subsequent generations to form new features within the group as a whole. I learned about how evolution happens so slowly that even though we evolve, every child is the exact same species as its parent, but that there may exist minor changes that when piled on over thousands of generations cause major changes. I learned about speciation, the process whereby geographic or other types of dividers between groups cause them to evolve in different directions, with different environmental pressures driving the acceptance of different mutations, until the groups are too different to procreate with each other. And thus, multiple species emerge, and that's what causes the diversity of life on this planet. And suddenly, it makes sense to me why there are so many millions of species on this planet that seem perfectly suited for their environments. Why there are so many different species of deer, cattle, goats, wildebeest, buffalo, rhinos, sheep, zebras, donkeys, horses, giraffes, and other hoofed animals that feed on plants but have different features to help them survive in their different environments. It makes sense to me now that humans were able to crossbreed cattle and buffalo to create a new species called the beefalo, which tolerates colder climate than a cow, but is more docile than a buffalo. It makes sense to me why it is so difficult to draw lines between the more than 300 different species of ducks, geese, and swan, and why some salamander groups that migrate into dark caves lose their eyesight after several hundred generations, but develop other features that their surface-dwelling cousins do not possess, like the ability to detect prey by sensing vibrations in the water. Now it makes sense to me why we humans are so fond of monkeys, and why we look so much like all the other primates to whom we are so closely related. It makes sense now how we became intelligent bipeds, because geological events on Earth created an environment where standing upright worked to the advantage of a group of apes in the newly parched African savanna. But you know what does not make sense to me now? Star Trek. So curse you, Charles Darwin. You freaking ruined Star Trek for me. That was my favorite show, you heartless monster. The purpose of this channel is to get you to ask yourself these two questions. Number 1. How strong is your faith? Number 2. Why?